I thought this would happen. Um, I did the one on education, my own, and there are two things that I realized as I thought about it. Uh, I didn't like school, so why would one continue it? And I also, I noticed in high school, and I don't really know quite why. Um, I had a terrible problem being told what to do, or listening to authority. Um, so I usually with male teachers, I think I would disengage. I mean, first off, I was not interested in science, mathematics. I was one of those humanities kids. That was one thing, and then I think I felt like, because I felt like this when I was in school, because I learned to read so early. I think that I read books, and then I would come into school, and they'd start to say, "Well, what's the book about?" And I would remember reading it, and I'd say, "Well, it's about this and that," and then they would say, "No, you're wrong," um, which is interesting. And but and I don't know exactly why. I don't know how that happens, or rather, because I am this way, I don't know that other people don't. Other children didn't feel like, um, oh gosh, there's an adult talking to me. That's amazing, and they're telling me stuff, and I'm going to write it down, and I'm going to remember it as what this is about, what that's about. For instance, I went through the like a fire. I went through C.S. Lewis, and then 15 years later, somebody said to me that they were all Christian allegories, and I was like, "Quoi? What?" And I also, on some level, feel the same way today about Dante, for instance. Um, so I'm not making any claims about the. I just didn't like being told stuff. I like to absorb stuff and cogitate over it. And it seemed, so the whole process of learning for me was quite strong, very young, and then I had, so whatever the university thing, I guess I had to enjoy the school experience in high school, and then add that to the idea that the aspirational part about college, which meant that you were going to come out with a degree, letters after your name, that you were going to get a diploma, you were going to people would be impressed with that, employers, and then they would employ you, and you would get a good job, and um, and none of that made any impression on me. Just none. Um, Still doesn't. Um, um, so that was my criticism of it after that. What I have discovered being in the world and encountering people is that their notions and their conceptions of existence are schooled, and to the extent that it makes any difference, for some reason I listen to them and I go, but that's not how it is. That's not how the world is. For instance, I'll give you a little for instance. I was in geometry, and so I was 14 or something, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I had a marvelous teacher, just a wonderful teacher. And he was one of those teachers who I was in a scholars program. It was advanced by a year, which is not significant because I'd come out of the British system in the West Indies, which means that you're a year ahead, whatever that means. And he says to me, he says in the class, he said, a straight line is infinite. It goes infinitely in both directions back. And I said at 14, I don't know why I said this because it's not interested me since, before. I said, so it's a circle. And my reasoning was that we have an imagination that we can imagine so far in any given direction. And so if we're looking up or looking down or looking whatever it is, you look in those directions so that you're so that forms a circle. And he did this thing that he used to do. He fluttered his eyes. And he looked at me and he said, yes, interesting. But that's just an example, which also was interesting in all kinds of classes, because in some of the classes I overlearned. So I would be doing something and I'd get deeply interested in it, usually for about 2 days, biology or chemistry or whatever it was. I got deeply interested and I plowed into it. So there is that. There is that level of it. And the idea of going to classrooms and and I hate to say this because I have encountered them since, that the university professors I did know, and I ran into them, I had a real hard time with. The male ones particularly. And right, so that's my personal thing, and which is meaningless. It doesn't mean anything. That's just my own personal thing, which is not connected to my major issue with the educated, which is that in any sphere of our existence, plans are made and policies are put in place, and Shakespeare plays are done, and the influence of a status quo or a canon, if you like, or an academy strikes me as being horrific. It's a huge block. People will argue with me and say that, people, that Noam Chomsky and stuff like that come to mind. And I go, yeah, okay, but Chomsky's alone, isn't he? And so the canon is a good notion, the Harold Bloom notion of the literature that we should all absorb. And if we don't absorb that, then we are deficient. It's terrible crapola. It's not to say that, I can listen to which I did, Beethoven or Brahms or any of those creatures, and I find them just glorious, but I don't think they're better than John Lee Hooker, whatever that means. So that clearly means something. I don't know about the rest of the world, but I know in my culture, in the arts, these high arts, this is very significant, that, certain arts are terribly significant, and certain operas are better than others, and all this sort of stuff. And flamenco is crap because it's created by thieves and gypsies and stuff. And it's just like on and on and on and on and on. And so that impacts my world, my profession, and as I see it, so it creates a sense, let me say this, it creates, as I've encountered it, it creates a sense of self. I am an educated person. I know this, I know that. I have this credential, as they call it. It creates a person who has not discovered themselves through themselves. And so for me, I've absorbed, I've absorbed a lot of Shakespeare. Not as much as many people, but I've absorbed quite a lot because I played the parts. So I have thoughts and I have realizations about Shakespeare, which remain deeply subjective. I have no, but if I come into a position of power, right, a director, the educated person in the room, the person who's going to produce the play for the audience, who is going to translate it, as it were, then we run into problems. And I was surprised because I've worked in this industry for a long time. I've worked in the art side of it also for a long time. And it is stunning, the lack of original thought I have encountered. Over and over again, you walk into a room and you start working on a play, and they will, if you go and you buy the Arden Shakespeare, the one that everybody values, there's reams of notes, just reams of half the bulk of the book is notes. And enough times one does, if you're playing Hamlet or whatever it is, for example, Hamlet in time, to die, to sleep, perchance, to sleep. Perchance to dream. There's the rub. So, just as a for instance, it's not a poem. It's an inner transformation. He doesn't know. He's not telling you. He's not a wise person telling you that to die is to sleep. He realizes it in the moment, right? For instance, I've seen enough Hamlets to know that that's not gotten through. It's, the way of doing it is to do it apparently as quickly as possible, which is not the speed of thought. There are chunks of the speeches which are very much the speed of thought. In fact, the notion that you don't know what you're going to say. I saw God by you, now I am alone. Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I. So you start off on that thing, you're going in one direction. The best one is how all occasions to inform against. How all occasions, he's just seen Fortinbras troops on the beach, 20,000 men or whatever it is, go to their graves like beds. And he's seen them and he goes, they all walk off. He's talked to the sea captain and they've all gone off, or he's talked to the captain. And he sees them and he goes, how all occasions do inform against me and spur my dull revenge. And he could leave. He could leave the stage at that moment. In fact, it's a wonderful thing to do, to leave that he's going. And then he comes back and he said, what is it? He's irritated and he comes back onto the stage to the audience. He's talking to the audience people. He's involved in a discourse with the audience and he says, what is a man if his chief good and market of his time be but to sleep and feed? A beast, no more. He might go again. And then comes back, sure, he that made us with such large discourse, looking before and after, gave us not that capability and godlike reason to fuss in us unused. Now, whether it be, see, so that's not taught. That's belligerence. That's this actor going, it's not like that. I'm discovering it. It's a process of discovery. And it's not over yet. And it wasn't over when I graduated from drama school. And it's not over when I played Hamlet. It's not over. It's never, it keeps going. So all of those, and people will say to me, no, of course I know that when I leave university, I continue learning. Of course you do. Of course you do. However, there is the delusion of authority, right? There's a problem right now in the world where you got so many people going to university. It's tailing off, thank God. But you got so many people going to university to basically be managers, to tell other people what to do. And the people who to be told what to do are running low. We're running out of those people. And if they are replaced, they're replaced by robots. So you've run into that. So this idea that, I'm going to go and in a short 4 years or 8 years, I don't really care, I'm going to go and gain the knowledge that I need. It's very male. It's a very masculine sort of notion. Say if you study the law, I study the law. So I study the law and I learn this and I learn that and I learn precedent and I learn all this sort of stuff. And we've got, quote, the wisest people in the country on the Supreme Court still mired in the orthodoxies of their monotheisms. And I hate to say it, but the monotheism to me looks unchallenged. That's a whole other discussion about religion, but the notion that you're going to go, the ultimate authority is going to, what do you think, God? Is everything stops. There's a stop. And all those chaps, those Thomases and who's not Scalia anymore, that awful Alito, they sit there and they have this aura of I know. And I'm looking at them and I'm going, you do, you know this and you know that. You don't know me, just like I don't know. And the whole premise of so much societal ill is based on the notion that some of us know and others don't. Some of us are trained, some of us are this and that and the other thing. And, if you live in the United States and you talk about equality, the whole United States culture is founded on the notion that you're not equal. It's a competitive system, and you're supposed to do this and you're supposed to do that to prove your worth. And once you've proved your worth, then you will get the milk and the honey. You know what I mean? And so it's toxic. Which has actually got nothing to do with learning. It has to do with credentialing. If we can make peace with that notion, it's credentials. It's not about learning, because learning happens. It happens to everybody, happens all the time. And we do very, very well to process how people learn. And I know I have friends who teach, and their brief, the thing that they're supposed to do, is almost entirely unnatural. It's entirely unnatural to fill these young brains with stuff and rules and ways of being and all that, when the young brain is going, I want to explore. Okay.